my family knew all of them. And so that experience, I believe, is an experience that made the people of the United States in the southern part of the United States a better people for having gone through all that history of slavery, human trafficking first. Well, there was genocide before there was human trafficking, because the indigenous people of the United States were genocided. And then you had the importation of Africans and their enslavement. You had the fight that we know over here as the Civil War. You had the emancipation of those enslaved Africans who were born in the United States, because that institution of slavery went on for a long time. And then, even then, the struggle wasn't over, because the struggle for human dignity, human rights, civil rights really only just began upon emancipation, because then the United States mistreated those Black citizens, those African descendant citizens of the US were greatly mistreated, which led to the Civil Rights Movement. And it was during the Civil Rights Movement that you had the prominence of personalities like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. You had local community heroes like the Black Panther Party members. And something very special happened to each of these heroes of the struggle for dignity, human dignity inside the United States. So with Malcolm X, there was a conspiracy to murder him. And that conspiracy became a part of a larger conspiracy that was later proved in the case of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where a jury in Memphis, Tennessee, found that the United States government conspired with certain individuals in Tennessee to kill Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, this is a kind of history that you won't read about very readily in the newspapers, either here or any place else around the world. But what I speak are the facts. And in addition to that, you certainly won't hear this information on Voice of America if you happen to live in an area where Voice of America and other broadcasts that are sponsored by the United States government. This is not the story that they will tell. They will tell the story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They might even talk about hip hop artists, but they won't talk about the COINTELPRO program, which was a program that was started by the United States government, the Justice Department. Can you imagine? The Justice Department starts a program to illegally surveil members of the American community, of the US community. And these are people who were Black, people who were white, people who were Native American. It really didn't matter. What they wanted to do was to make sure that those who had control of the power in the United States always had control of the power. And so when communities began to come together in the 1960s, Blacks and whites and Latinos, at that time, they were mostly Mexican Americans, all came together and decided that we're going to work together to achieve our goals and redress our grievances. So that's what we did. They did as a generation just a little bit ahead of me. And they were almost successful. In fact, what they showed in the 1960s was that it is possible for people to change, people to become better individuals, people to could step outside of their sort of community or racial paradigm, and they could walk in another person's shoes. They could understand other people's struggles. And that's how you had at that time, the United States was involved in the Vietnam War. And that's how you had young, idealistic college students who came together and said, no more war. We don't want to have any war. We don't want to kill people overseas. We don't want to kill people abroad. And they formed such a powerful coalition and network across the country that the United States government decided that this had to stop.